Welcome to Chicago, a project-based learning unit. Today, we will be introduced to the project-based unit and Google site, meet the students, review the learning objectives and standards for the unit, be provided with an overview of the types of learning strategies used throughout the unit, learn about the technology that is used throughout the lessons, review the assessments that are used to measure progress on the learning objectives. Welcome to Chicago is a project-based learning unit that works on the principles of project-based learning and the technology of Google Site. The project-based learning strategy and Google Site work perfectly together to create a blended learning environment that allows students to become 21st century learners. The National Education Association identifies 4 skills that all students must be able to do to be successful: collaborate, create, communicate, and use critical thinking skills. Project-based learning and Google Site bring this all together. Project-based learning works by posing a question or challenge, and students work on solving these questions or challenges by working together over a long period of time, using prior skills, gaining knowledge, and collaborating with one another. The Google site makes all of this learning possible. On the home page, the challenge and scenario is immediately posed. It is done so in an exciting and engaging way to get the learners hooked. The challenge is something that can happen in the real world. In project-based learning, the teacher serves as a facilitator and guide. On the right side of the home page, there is a list of jobs and responsibilities for the students. It is very similar to a deadline that can be given to a worker in the real world. Students are given their expectations of how they should be progressing. On the left side of the site, there is a bar with the following tabs: For Students, For Teachers, and Q&A. Beneath For Students are the tabs to go to Communication, Ideas, Informational Resources, Rubrics, and Survey. These links allow students to work independently on their project and be self-directed. The Communication tab is a place for students to log into todaysmeet.com. Todaysmeet.com is a place where students can post questions, answer one another, receive answers and guidance from a teacher, share ideas, and give and receive feedback from one another and from the teacher. The Ideas tab is listed because of the age of the students it is targeting. Many students may not have experience with creating presentations or working with this kind of challenge. The tab allows students to get ideas for their projects from the teacher without actually needing to ask the teacher. The Informational Resources tab, like the Ideas tab, is designed for the age group. Students may not know where to go and find resources online, so it is meant to be a starter to find resources students can use in their own learning. The Rubrics tab allows students to see what they are being graded on. This allows the students to check themselves, work towards meeting their goal, and have self-responsibility, as they will know what is expected of them. The final tab under For Students is the Survey tab. This is a place for students to go at the conclusion of the unit and get feedback on the project-based learning unit. This will allow for the teacher to make changes to the project and help students for the next time. Finally, there is the For Teachers tab. This tab brings the teacher to an explanation of how the project is going to work and the learning outcomes the unit hopes to achieve. The subtabs are Assessments, Common Core Standards, and Lesson Plans. The assessments are what is going to be used to determine if the students met the learning outcomes. The Common Core Standards lists what standards the unit is teaching. Lastly, the Lesson Plans tab provides the teachers with a day-by-day look at how to teach the unit. The lesson formats are done using the Madeline Hunter style. Overall, project-based learning and the Google Sites complement each other well. It allows the teacher to act as a guide in their students' learning. It allows the students to be empowered and direct themselves towards the goal. It provides students with a challenge and an opportunity to use all 4 21st century learning skills in a process of rising to the challenge. Students are given the opportunity to use technology in their attempts to create, collaborate, communicate, and think critically. This project-based learning unit and Google site were designed for a 4th grade elementary class. The school's demographics are 56% low income, 23% English learners, and 18% students with disabilities. With a large population of the student receiving free reduced lunch, many of the students do not have access to a computer outside of school. Those that do have access to a computer often do not have access to the internet. Chromebooks were introduced to the students halfway through the last school year, but now work with them relatively often. Each grade level has access to a Chrome cart, and Chromebooks are shared between classes. The practice the students do have with computers comes from school. Due to the possible lack of familiarity with researching on the internet, there's a resource tab on the Google site. This will allow students with an ease of access to find a resource to begin their research. The class itself contains 22 4th grade students. The class is composed of 11 boys and 11 girls. The class is 50% white, 32% Hispanic, 13% African American, and 4% Asian Pacific Islanders. These statistics are slightly different than the overall school demographics. In the class, there are also 2 students who have an individualized education plan, IEP, 1 student has a 504 plan, and 4 students receive English learner support. There is a classroom aide in the classroom to provide support to the students with an IEP. However, the classroom teacher utilizes the classroom aide so that she is available to provide support to all students. The English language teacher pushes into the classroom during writing time to assist with language acquisition and language goals. The EL teacher helps identify what students can do based on their English language proficiency scores that are gathered through the WIDA testing. Because project-based learning is often done in pairs or groups, it benefits students with disabilities and English learning needs. Students with disabilities should be paired with high average to average students. This will help allow the students to work together to access the content, whereas individually, a student who has a learning disability may have difficulty reading web pages and organizing their writing. English learners should be paired with students who are English language proficient. This will allow students to hear and see peer modeling in the 4 language domains: speaking, listening, writing, and reading. Overall, the learning unit is designed to give all students their greatest chance at success and to meet their learning objectives while working on 21st century learning skills. Students in the class have many different learning styles. The project-based learning unit is designed to accommodate all learners. There are many visuals, including during the teaching of content, as well as on the Google site. There is auditory teaching going on during the lesson. All students can use their learning styles to create a presentation that best matches their learning needs. Students who are kinesthetic can build a physical model of their presentation. Students who are visual can design their own slideshow presentation. Musical learners can sing their presentation. Project-based learning allows students to create whatever they want to meet their learning target. Prior to the unit, students have been learning about informational text. They have experience with reading and writing it using text features. This will help them as they research and write information to solve their challenge. The students have been working on Chromebooks all year. Many of them have experience using Google Documents because a classroom teacher shares documents for the students to use. Overall, the project-based learning unit and Google site are designed to meet the needs of all learners. The whole website is designed to help students because of their inexperience with these types of research. Students with disabilities will be paired with higher functioning students, and English learners will be paired with peers who are proficient in the English language. The unit allows students of all learning styles to create a presentation that fits their style. The unit and website are designed to allow all students to succeed. Because the students have been learning about informational text, reading, and writing, the learning outcomes for the unit are designed to show student mastery of using these skills. The first learning outcome is, at the conclusion of this unit, students will be able to demonstrate an understanding of informational text and writing by writing what they learned about a Chicago landmark by scoring a proficient on a rubric. After learning about informational text previously and then using informational text to research a Chicago landmark, students should be able to write a paper that includes headings, titles, a table of contents, illustrations with captions, and a glossary. The second learning outcome is, at the conclusion of this unit, students will represent textual information by creating and presenting their research through a multimedia format on a Chicago landmark and score a proficient on the rubric. This is how students will solve their project-based learning challenge. As a culminating activity, The students will create their own presentation to complete the challenge using informational text. The final learning outcome is, at the conclusion of this unit, students will be able to demonstrate the ability to read and understand informational text and text features by identifying 100% of the text features. Students will be assessed on their ability to identify text features. This will allow the teacher to assess whether or not students can use different text features to find information. Because technology is an important part of being successful in the 21st century, many of the learning objectives are directly tied to being able to use technology to collaborate with others. One learning objective that shows this is, given a Chromebook and access to todaysmeet.com, the students will demonstrate the ability to use technology to pose and respond to specific questions, to clarify or follow up on information, and make comments that contribute to the discussion and link to the remark of others. This objective also indirectly assesses whether or not a student is able to navigate the Google site. Another objective is, given a Chromebook and access to Google Docs, the student will demonstrate the ability to use technology to collaborate one-on-one with a partner to build knowledge of a Chicago landmark. Google Documents is a technology many adults use today in the real world. This learning objective allows for students to be given the opportunity to see how well they are able to use technology to collaborate with a partner to achieve a common goal. All learning objectives in the unit are directly tied to the Common Core standards. The learning environment takes place in a classic brick and mortar building. The classroom is a rectangular shaped with a smartboard at the front of the room. For the purpose of this unit, desks can be arranged into groups of 2 where students can sit side by side with the peer they are going to be working with. This will prevent students from being distracted by peers from other groups. The desks will all face to the front of the classroom. This will allow them to watch videos on a smartboard, see modeling from the teacher, and keep an eye on todaysmeet.com. This will be left on a smartboard at the front of the room, so students can see what others are working on, in case their own browser is covered up by something else. The virtual learning environment is the Google site and todaysmeet.com. The Google site is created as a virtual classroom so that students can self-direct themselves to accomplishing their goal, with the teacher only needing to serve as a facilitator. It also allows for students to ask questions, receive answers, and find resources. Todaysmeet.com is sort of a virtual chat room, where students can ask questions, receive answers, post ideas, and get feedback. With the classroom layout and technology, there may be a few distractions. One distraction that may occur is the sound of students collaborating with one another verbally. Todaysmeet.com should prevent students from needing to verbally get up and go to another group for help or answers. They can ask the questions without having to get up on todaysmeet.com. Students may get distracted if another group gets ahead and begins to create their presentation in the back of the room. Another distraction may be the lights. The lights may cause it to be difficult to see what is happening on the smartboard, or when a student is using the projector to display their project on the smartboard. The content for this lesson will be taught using a project-based learning strategy. Students have been introduced to informational text, no key text features, and are learning how to do informational writing. Students have background information on communities, rural, suburban, and urban. According to the Buck Institute for Education, project-based learning works by posing a question, problem, or challenge to the learners, which students work to gather information to solve. The teacher will take over the role of facilitator and help guide students to creating a way to solve the challenge. Because they have learned about Chicago in the past, they are going to be posed with the challenge of being a part of the next Mayor of Chicago's Tourism Committee and creating an engaging presentation about a Chicago landmark that would attract people to come and visit Chicago. Project-based learning works if the challenge is open-ended and causes them to use critical thinking skills to solve and work on it over time. The challenge is open-ended, and that students get to choose their own landmarks to research and then decide how they want to present the information. This content will be delivered in a Madeline Hunter format. Other strategies that will be used are cooperative learning strategies and resource-based learning. Cooperative learning strategies allow students to work together to achieve academically and increase their engagement. The cooperative learning strategies will allow for students to share what they are working on, increase their knowledge on Chicago landmarks, provide an opportunity for peer collaboration, and provide English learners to use their listening and speaking skills. Project-based learning also calls for students to work in pairs or groups. Because students are in 4th grade and do not have much experience doing online research, resource-based learning will provide students with a quick list of resources to use to find information on what they want to research, as well as be presented with possible presentation ideas and a rubric. The teacher's role will be that of a facilitator and resource guide. On day 1 of the unit, the learning objectives that are to be met at the end of the lesson are: given a Chromebook and access to todaysmeet.com, the students will demonstrate the ability to use technology to pose and respond to specific questions, to clarify or follow up on information, and make comments that contribute to the discussion and link to the remarks of others. And, given a Chromebook and access to Google Docs, the students will demonstrate the ability to use technology to collaborate one-on-one with a partner to build knowledge of a Chicago landmark. There are multiple accommodations that are to be taken into consideration for learners, as listed under the students section earlier. Additionally, resource books are at an appropriate reading level. During and after the lesson, students will be assessed on their ability to contribute to discussion by posting at least one question and or comment on todaysmeet.com. Students will also be assessed on their ability to collaborate with a partner using technology by sharing a Google document between their peer and teacher. Teachers should and can give feedback directly on this document. The behavioral objectives will be monitored using the data table below, which can also be found in the appendices. As an anticipatory set to get students excited about what they are going to do, play the YouTube video Welcome to Chicago by World Business Chicago on a smartboard. This video is a great way to build background information for students and show what a potential presentation looks like. After the video, present the scenario and challenge that the students are being commissioned by the Mayor of Chicago to create a tourism presentation about a Chicago landmark to get people to visit the city. Having a challenge or question is the key characteristic to using the project-based learning strategy. After presenting the scenario, tell the students their learning objectives. These objectives are written in student-friendly language using I can statements and can be posted on the wall before each lesson. After covering the objectives with the students, give the students a pretest on identifying informational text features. This can be done using any informational book found in a library. Show the book underneath the projector. After the pretest, review informational writing and text features. Then teach students about Google Docs, how to share a document, how to access and navigate the Google site, and how to use todaysmeet.com to provide help to peers and ask questions. Walk students through all of the Google site tabs, and then model how to access it. After modeling, the teacher should check for understanding. Students will use the Kagan Cooperative Learning Strategy, Time Paired Share, to explain to each other what needs to be done. Time Paired Share is when students take turns sharing for 30 seconds each. This gives each student a chance to discuss. This is particularly important for English learners, as it will give them a chance to use their listening and speaking skills. Finally, it is time for students to work on objectives and practice what they learned. Students work with their research partner to create a Google Doc on Chromebook and share with one another and a teacher. Students will work with partners to decide which landmark to research and tell the class which landmark they are researching in todaysmeet.com. It is important for the teacher to remember that in project-based learning, the teacher becomes a facilitator and should be there only as a guide to help the students in their own learning. Finally, at the end of the lesson day 1, the teacher should review the project-based learning challenge. Create an engaging tourism presentation about a Chicago landmark. During day 2, kick off the lesson by playing the song Chicago by Frank Sinatra. At the conclusion of the song, review the student objectives that should be posted in student-friendly I can statements. After covering the objectives, the teacher should review informational text features and components and review how to find and use the resources. The teacher should then model these skills. To check for understanding, students will use todaysmeet.com to ask or answer any questions and provide feedback and collaborate with classmates. During practice, the teacher acts as a facilitator and helps the students as needed. The teacher, classroom aide, and EL resource teacher are available for this. Students work in pairs to gather research information on their Chicago landmark. The teacher will close the lesson by reviewing learning objectives and explain research which will continue during tomorrow's lesson. Day 3 is very similar to today 2, only the anticipatory set will be a person who actually works in Chicago at a landmark. They'll come in and be an example for students of how to present on a landmark. At the conclusion of the presentation, review the objectives. This day will mostly be used for allowing students to finish their research. At the conclusion of the lesson, direct students to the Google Site tab, Ideas, and have them start thinking about what they might like to present. Day 4 is the day students really get to go to work. As you can see on this image, construction ahead, students are using all of the research they have been doing to construct their presentation. This is the main basis for project-based learning. At the end of the lesson, remind students to dress nicely for tomorrow's lesson, as they will be presenting to the Mayor and Tourism Committee. Day 5 is the culminating day of the unit. This is when students will present their information. They will take a post-test on textual information features. And they will also take a survey to provide feedback on a project-based unit so that the teacher can make changes in the future. Technology is a huge part in making this project-based learning unit successful. Multiple forms of technology will be used. Chromebooks are going to be used as the main access point to information. They'll be using it for researching, creating, and communicating with peers, as well as accessing the Google site and todaysmeet.com. Google Docs will also be incorporated to share the research with the teacher and partner. Todaysmeet.com will be used to ask questions, receive answers, and provide and receive feedback from peers. Google Presentation may be used if the students choose to make a PowerPoint presentation. An iPad may be used if the students decide to use an app to create a video as part of their presentation. Google Chrome will be used for researching. Kahoot! Will be used for an anticipatory set to get students engaged. The Smartboard for providing teacher input and modeling to the students. Students may also use the Smartboard to present their project on. The Smartboard will also be used to display todaysmeet.com as the students work their way through their project. A Smartboard document camera may be used for students to present their research. Google Site will be used to help students access content, ask questions, check their progress throughout the unit, and find resources. With all technology, there can be a few barriers. Chromes can get broken. If there is internet troubles or failure, students won't be able to access much of the unit. Students who have a low reading ability may find accessing the content in Google Site to be very difficult. They may have trouble spelling out what it is they need to research and communicating their ideas. Because of an experience with computer technology, students may have difficulty typing and researching. The assessments used within this project-based learning unit are targeted specifically at the learning outcomes of being able to create a presentation using informational text, to write a paper on a topic using informational text features and research, and to be able to use technology to collaborate with peers. In the first few lessons, students will be assessed on their ability to contribute to discussion by posting at least one question or comment on todaysmeet.com. Students will also be assessed on their ability to collaborate with a partner using technology by sharing a Google document between their peer and teacher and frequently updating it with their research. The behavioral objectives will be monitored using a very simple data table. The data table is shown below. The symbol plus shows that the objective was met, and the symbol minus shows that the objective was not met. This allows the teacher to provide immediate feedback after the lesson to the student. If the student is receiving a minus symbol, it could be that them and their partner don't understand how to access the technology, whether it be resources to find facts to write about in their Google document, or how to use todaysmeet.com to collaborate with peers and post ideas. The main learning outcomes are assessed using rubrics. The rubrics for presenting and writing can be found at the Google site. Rubrics help promote student self-efficacy because the students are in control of their own grade. If they are able to follow the rubric and cover everything that leads to a proficient, they have led themselves to success. The rubrics are accessible on the Google site. The instructional text assessment requires a teacher to find an informational text book. They will then label parts of the book 1 through 5. These will then be displayed underneath the overhead smartboard projector for the students to see. The students will be responsible for identifying what the text features are. A word bank is provided as an accommodation for students with disabilities. A survey is also attached to the Google site. This survey allows students to rate the course. This assessment will then provide information on how the course can be revised in the future. This assessment can be read aloud to the students and done in a whole group. In conclusion, with the combination of technology and the ideas behind project-based learning, a unit can be created that allows students to prepare for their futures as adults. Some people find that collaboration to achieve a goal is one of the most important skills to have in the future. Project-based learning is based on the idea of working together with a partner or group to solve a question, problem, or challenge. Technology can allow for great collaboration. Project-based learning also lets students lead the way in their own learning. The Google site allows for students to drive their own learning with the guidance of a teacher. Students can monitor their own achievements with the use of a rubric. Overall, project-based learning and the incorporation of technology allows students to create, collaborate, communicate, and use critical thinking skills, which are all skills that prepare them to be successful in the 21st century.